So yes, today I'm going to talk about accelerate scaling in Microsoft 365 and Viva. So what are we talking about then? And I guess some of us can recognize ourselves in this, as I did in our everyday life. There's maybe too much to do and little time to learn. But as we see, I mean, all of us, I guess, have heard about Copilot by now. And there are certain things we need to learn to actually use these new tools in a good way. So first of all, I thought let me ask you, dear audience, if what challenges are we actually facing these days when it comes to scaling and learning in general? And if you would like to try it out to scan with your phone, the QR code, or I can just copy the link as well into, hold on a second, I'm just gonna close here a second, copy the link. Yeah, copy it and into the chat field. There you go. Share screen again. See if there are any responses to the challenges. Anyone here? Let's see, wait a little minute. Maybe take some time. I did actually this time remember to put it that everyone can answer. I mean, that's key number one when you want to share a form online, is to make sure that everyone can actually answer it. So you go to settings and you click on anyone can answer. So yeah. So maybe just take some time. Oh, there's one response. Here we go. Let's see what's happening here. Thinking about it. And there are a few other questions as well in that same form. We might visit it later on. Just take some time now. Where Cloud? Is it coming? Two responses. Yay. Yeah, no time. Flow of work, not in the flow. Good. Anyone else? So let's see. Now, these are good, very good points. And yeah, we hear it all the time. So here we go. So, and if you don't mind, you just answer also the rest of the question, or do this also later if you want. It's always interesting because I'm going to talk about this skilling and learning today, and I will also write some blogs about it because there are so much. It's very close to my heart to make sure that we are all at least a certain level when it comes to digital competency and learning and skilling these days. So when I talk to customers, what I hear is also in addition to what you just described there with the flow and the time, is also the maturity, both when it comes to maturity for the employees, when it comes to digital competency, and as well as the organization, because they can be at different places. Maybe like we see now these days, we see that many of the employees, they want Copilot and they are maybe ready because they paid attention and they studied this, but the organization as a whole might not be ready. And then you have a mismatch there. And it comes, maturity is not that you're not good or not bad, or it just, you need to go to certain steps to grow when it comes to digital competency. And as somebody mentioned in the form, that time, because there is many times the problem that we don't have, well, we say we don't have time for training and time for skilling, but we all have 24 hours in a day. There's no difference there between any of us. So then the question is, how do you prioritize time for learning and skilling? Do your manager give you a certain time per week for skilling and learning? Because the thing is, it is when my manager gives me time to learn. For example, we implemented what we call meeting-free Fridays. And that was amazing because number one, what happened when my managers did that, the whole thing changed in our organization overnight, basically, because the purpose of having that meeting-free Friday was that we don't have repetitive meetings. And it was for us to use that day to get on top of our emails, and also do studies. If I needed to deep dive into a topic, I can do that. Maybe I wanted to do a certification, I can use the Friday to do that because I have peace and quiet, and all of us are not to be disturbed during that Friday. And it's up to us to decide how we want to use that day. If I want to go for a long walk, listen to a podcast related to work, that is perfect, or if I want to do a study. So it is about giving the employees time to skill and to learn. It is super important because it is an investment in your employees. Your employees are not milking cows that you can just milk and milk and milk and get, money out of as long as they last. You need to invest in them for them to last longer because that's what you want to do, right? Super important. And another part is fragmented. What we see quite a lot of, and I discussed a lot with customers, is that they have different kinds of learning system solutions, different initiatives around in the organization, but it is fragmented. Maybe HR is doing something, IT is doing something else. The people out there cutting woods and lumbers out in the forest, they are doing certain skilling, but not everybody knows about all of this. So the whole key is to how can we bring learning and make all the learning that we actually have available for everyone in the organization, if and when they need it. So that is super important. And what are the strategies that we have? That might not be clear. Where are we going? That might not also be clear. Maybe many times when I go out to visit the customer, I go out on their website and see what are they saying about themselves. What are they doing when it comes to digital competency or digitalization or what you would like to call it, or technology focus, for example. And then many times I take a print screen of their visions and their strategies that are telling the rest of the world that they are doing. And then I show this to the management group, and they don't always know about this page even. So visit your own web page and see what you're telling the rest of the world that you are doing, because what you're doing should actually be connected to that, actually. So yeah, so it many times we see learning and training is fragmented, and maybe not you have the maturity or different kinds of maturity across the organization and employees, and then you need time to train. That is super important. And another thing is that we need to understand the beast, as I say. What are we actually facing in our everyday life? And just in the Microsoft sphere, this is what is facing you and me and our colleagues. And if you think it's a lot to keep track of, what do you think about colleagues who are not that into tech? What are they feeling and experiencing? And there's so many tools that can do more or less the same thing that it's super easy to get confused. And all of us working in tech, we know that it's hard to us even to get on top of everything. And we are not meant to know everything. And I guess some of you know about these pictures to the right, which is called the MoCA, the Microsoft Modern Collaboration Architecture, because also Microsoft saw that there are a lot of tools that can do more or less the same thing. However, they are more useful in certain contexts. So they have set up these MoCA models, which can make it easier for us, at least to look at, okay, which tools do I use when in which kind of context? And for us working in adoption or working in tech, this is a good tool. However, if I want to show this to my colleague who's not that interested in tech, it's just too much. It's like giving a full mug of water and maybe they just need a glass, right? So for us, it is important that we kind of break it down into bite-sized pieces that makes it easier for them to understand. And we need to have clear rules, because Microsoft has a lot of good material and there's a lot of videos and information out there. However, in our organization, there's certain things we need to decide, how are we going to do that? And nobody else outside can answer that question. So we, in our organization, we need to decide, okay, how do we run informal meetings? How do we run project meetings? How do you run formal meetings? We need to decide that, and then we can create training based on that. And then for example, in the right place where we inform about that training, we bring in links to whatever is in Microsoft, for example, and make it into a concrete context. That is super important, because that is what our colleagues will ask for. How do I run meetings? How do I work with documents? That is, we need to make the decision, and then we need to assimilate that and inform the rest of our organization how we are doing. What is our way of work with these tools? That is super important. And not only this that our colleagues have to deal with, they also have all the social medias. They have, maybe we have also, of course, other systems that are not Microsoft systems. So there's a lot of tech that our colleagues have to deal with every day. So at least let's remove some that is not necessary and also get rid of some that is also equally important, and then put it into a context for example, learning and what they need to do. And then, yeah, maybe some of you have seen this before. What if we invest in our people and they leave, and what happens if we don't and they stay? So back to this importance of we need to take care of our employees and invest in them so they last longer, because the key is that if my boss invests in me and my skilling and my training, I enjoy working for my company. I have fun. I feel I'm valued as a resource, as an employee in my company. And I can maybe even get good ideas. That is good business. So if I'm happy, company's happy. That is how it is. Yeah, still difficult. Oh, see, here we got some more information. Yeah, fast pace of changes by Microsoft. Yeah, it's like a firehouse on full speed with all these changes, and it's hard to keep up. So, but at the same time, we don't have to work in the or walk in the same tempo as Microsoft. Sometimes it's a good idea to take a step back and focus on what is important for us now. And then we start to run after Microsoft. Yeah, it is a balance. So hopefully I can give you some good ideas today what to do and tools. Yeah, good. Thank you so much for joining that form. That is good. And now we are, I mean, artificial intelligence is here already, and it's called generative artificial intelligence, which means that it is using what is already existing. It's not creating something new, only the combination of how it is combining these things is maybe new and gives us ideas that somebody else have thought that we haven't thought about. So that is how AI is working for us. So it's not going to take over the world. I mean, but who's going to take over the world are those who are actually learning and understanding and mastering artificial intelligence. It is a tool, just like any other tool. It's not nothing more mysterious than that. But however, it has an effect of how we work, and every company, whether you are implementing Copilot or not, you need to make some decisions and do some changes. You have to do it to be relevant tomorrow, basically. And we want to create engagement in the organization. We want to everybody feel like they are an important part of this journey our organization is on. So you have Viva, and you have productivity, which you already know from Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365, that is where the work gets done. That's where you have your meetings. That's where you create content. That is where you share content. This is your workspace. And then in engagement, you have, for example, Viva, you have Viva Engage, you have Viva Connections, you have all these Viva tools that can help to build up on the engagement. And then into the picture comes Copilot. I can't have a session today without mentioning Copilot, but it is I'm not going to go into Copilot, but it is the reason why we do what we do is to be able to master a Copilot when we are ready for that. And then, of course, will then affect our performance. And none of us know actually how Copilot or artificial intelligence going to change our world tomorrow. We don't know that. No, don't know if anyone knows, at least not in the foreseeable future. But we do know there are things we need to do to be able to master these tools. Because as we see, the pace is increasing, the updates and information, it's all going faster. It means we need to work smarter, because what we also see, it is hard to find skilled people to join our companies as well, because we have to search for them all over the place and it's hard to find them. So that means we need to skill those that we already have, and it is not a good idea to skill people that we already have in our organization. Number one, they feel valued and they last longer, and we want people to stay longer in our organization. And then again, one size doesn't fit all. I guess you've seen this one before. And just creating e-learning, and then good luck. And here you have some Teams, or here you have some SharePoint, or here you have some Copilot tools. Good luck, have fun. Doesn't work like that. And what is important is to teach people and train people where they are in the context of what they are doing and based on their skill. And not all of us learn in the same way. We learn in different ways, and we need to learn different things, and that is fine. So learning and skilling, you have to do in different ways. And what we see is useful is short videos, but not only that. Sometimes you need to have a classroom course. Sometimes you have to have a lunch and learn. Sometimes you have to coach people, hand holding in the beginning, and after a while they can go on by themselves. So you need to have a combination of training. And just because somebody doesn't have digital skills doesn't mean they're stupid. It's just they haven't learned. So that is also important for us who are training and organizations to make sure that we are covering all the levels, that we are walking in the rhythm with everyone in the organization, not just start on where we think they are, but to actually do some mapping, do investigating, have services, do measurements to see where really are people. Because people don't want to maybe say that they don't know because they feel embarrassed. So I think it's important to take care of people also in the training process. Because you're not stupid just because you don't know, because you haven't been taught. So we all have started somewhere, right? So we have to have that, be that humble and make sure that we have differentiated training of our employees. And the thing is, there are some good information out there to help us. And I come back to this time and time again because it is really nice. In EU, they have created what they call a framework for digital competency. And recently it was updated with activities within these 5 areas. And what I've used this for is, for example, if I want to send a survey out to my employees to see where are they when it comes to their levels and understanding, etc. Then we can say within these 5 areas, then I can create some questions. For example, when it comes to communication and collaboration and sharing information and content through digital technologies. All right, maybe I can create a couple of questions related to this activity. And then I say, okay, I agree or don't agree how comfortable I am with, for example, sharing information or how often I do it, for example. So these are good helping tools that you can use to create your questions. And then when you send a survey to your employees, maybe you have the whole organization or maybe just a set of people for different roles. So at least you get a snapshot of the whole organization, but don't disturb everyone, for example. So it is important to don't have too long surveys, but just short enough and pointing enough to or sharp enough for the specific areas you want to investigate. So it is important to have also different parts of the organization, that you have managers, you have those on the floor or those working outside the office or those working inside the office, for example, if that is different in your organization. So these are handy. So yeah. So search it up and you'll get the presentation later. I'll find out where to share it and you can get it. So use it, borrow it, steal it, whatever you like, it's yours. All right. So in our organization, we also have maybe different kinds of learning sources. We might have some LMS solutions, maybe have some e-learning. There are many different kinds of learning. And this is just, for example, in the Microsoft space or technology space. But also we have other things. Maybe I'm building roads. I need to have some asphalt course, or maybe I'm out in the woods So I need to make sure that sustainability is taken care of when we are handling all these logs and trees and all of that. So there are different expertise areas in addition to our digital expertise that we need to train our people. So many times we have maybe learning solutions that by third party or LMS that is related to these specific expertise areas. And then we have, of course, a lot on the Microsoft resources. There's LinkedIn Learning. And if I now, for example, add Viva Learning, there will be automatically LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn, and the Microsoft 365 training, like Help and Learn pages. It's all there in part of the Viva Learning automatically, right? So you can start shopping for learning elements, if you like, when you start using Viva Learning, which is a great tool to bring learning into the lens of Teams. However, there is a golden treasure hiding in so many companies around the world, and that is, you guessed it, our own produced content. For example, if I have run a webinar for my colleagues, or if I run a presentation, or maybe I ran a course with a department somewhere, that is a very good source of learning, which shouldn't only be available for those who just joined that class or that webinar. I can share it and define this as a learning element and add it into Viva Learning. So that information as well is available via the lens of Teams. And you don't need to have the premium license in Viva Learning to do that. So you can start, if you're considering Viva Learning and not sure if you would like to buy the premium licenses, you can start by create your own content as Viva Learning elements, and then start shopping for that. Because that is your color, if you want to say it like that, into your learning ecosystem, basically. So yeah, super interesting. So what you do is you set it up in SharePoint. So if you have a learning element, you create a SharePoint site with a SharePoint list, and then you add it into that list as a learning source. And then simsalabim, it shows up in your Viva Learning in Teams. Magic, right? So if there are any questions, please feel free to chat in the chat field, or after the session we can raise hands and discuss. So yes, this is how it would, for example, look like in Viva Learn if you haven't seen it before. And as you see, I have on the left side, I have my interest, for example, and then you have these learning materials that I'm going through. And I have, for example, below here, I can have a list of who is providing the learning. And then if I have then created our own, it will also say, for example, CloudWay Learning, for example, down if I scroll down further. And then I can also filter the learning elements by durations, because maybe I'm sitting on a bus somewhere, I'm going to be there for an hour going from A to B. Then I can take a 45-minute session, using the time when I'm on the bus and learn something new, right? So that is, and I have this available from my phone, from my pad, from my laptop, or from PCs. It's available for anywhere as long as I have my Teams app, right? So here we go. And then you have what we call featured learning. It's on top here. For example, October is usually security month. And then it's a good idea to use that for all the security campaigns that you want to run during that month, because then it's available for everyone what is set as featured learning on the top here. And then on the far top here, you would have your home, which is your overview of your learning. Then you have my learning, it's your courses that you have assigned to. And admin, if I have admin rights into this Viva Learning image here, then I would, for example, as an admin, set which is the featured learning for this month, for example. But that is only those who have that role in setting up the Viva Learning. For the rest, you will have my learning in home, for example. So if you have it, you can have a look, go and have a look what you see in your own Viva Learning now. And then you have something called Microsoft Learning Pathway, Microsoft 365 Learning Pathway. Thumbs up if you're already using this or have helped your customers with this. It is super nice. It gives you, it's a SharePoint online communication site, and it comes with ready pictures and links and some information that is useful. However, when I get this for the first, we create a different name for it. So it has, for example, CloudWay Digital Academy, for example, and then we start uh, building content in the back, which we then bring to the front of this Viva learning page. And for example, the big box, we will put what is in focus right now. Maybe we're going to run a webinar series, or maybe we're going to run a campaign. So then that is in the big picture, which is the main focus. And then I have a group of champions, maybe on different locations, so people can go into the champion overview. It's a SharePoint list where the different champions are. And then we have a link, for example, into upcoming courses and training that's going to happen, and different resources. And then, at some point, everybody at some point in time is getting started somehow. So even if you have run a campaign of get started with Copilot, for example, it doesn't mean you're finished when you're done that set of campaign or training. It means that you have to have it available because in 3 months you have maybe new people coming into the company and they need to get started, or maybe a business area wasn't ready to start with these things now. They might be ready in 6 months, so then they have to get started. So the get started is a continuously journey, and then you get started with new things, of course. So when you click on get started, the image here, you will come to a page where you have all kinds of get started with Copilot, with OneNote, or get started with meetings, get started with project, get started with working with documents, all of these kinds of things that you can have. So you build different pages, and on these pages, what is special with the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathway is that it has playlists with Microsoft resources. So for example, if I create a page under get started about get started with meetings, then I explain in text and image and print screens how we will run meetings, and then I will add maybe a planner video, a OneNote video, and even a SharePoint video if that is relevant for how we run this meeting. It should be, because you have documents in that meetings perhaps and presentations, so it's useful to use SharePoint, by the way. So yeah, so that's how you use these playlists that is readily available in the learning pathway. And it's basically just a template that you add to your existing SharePoint. Yeah, and then there's a comment here when we go to additional lines to success factor. That's a question. Okay, when we go to will it also update the training in LMS, or only showing the available? Oh yeah, no, the Microsoft Learning doesn't change anything to your existing training. It just makes it available in Viva Learning. Yeah, that is, yeah, it goes only one way. Yeah, good question, Jan. Yeah, all right, so good. Yeah, so the Viva Learning, your pathway is excellent to use as your training hub. And you don't have to only have like Microsoft training on it. You could have all kinds of training, get started with woodwork, or get started with fishing. I mean, it's all depending on what you're talking about in this. You can use it as either a digital academy, all kinds of digital training, or technology training, or even all kinds of training. So it all depends on, of course, how big your organization are and how many competency areas you are considering. But of course, you can also create several. You don't have to have only one. You can have several, and then they can be intertwined with a hub site, for example, which is a different session altogether. But yeah, that is something you can do. All right, so how is this kind of flowing? I think it's important. Many times when we talk about technology, we talk about this technology or that technology. And what I see many times is missing is how it is all connected. So for example, in a learning ecosystem, then we would have, for example, a team working on producing the content for learning, or maybe even several teams working in teams, the work group working in teams. creating the learning content, right? So then we use Teams for that. We create channels, we organize our work. So that is our workroom where we produce things. And you have in different SharePoint sites, you can also have different contents that you have shared with others. Then in what we have to do is to create a SharePoint site, whether that is on the same site as the learning pathway or if it is a separate SharePoint site, that depends on how much you have basically and how you would like to organize it. But there's no right or wrong in that connections. But what you do is that you create this learning content catalog, which is basically a SharePoint list in that SharePoint site where you have that list. And then you connect, if you have LMS solutions, you connect that as learning resources. If you have content on SharePoint sites from the respective teams, or if you want to curate them on that one learning pathway SharePoint site, because that might be a good idea to you work on that in different kind of work groups, because then the key is that then it will be only available for those who are in those work groups unless they open it up to everyone. So it can be a good idea when I'm happy with the webinar here, I have run it, I copy it over or I move it over to, for example, a document library on the learning pathway, the learning hub, and I use that as where they kind of live when they are completed. So then I made a link from the folder where the learning material is living basically, and I add that as a link into this list. And then that will be then of course available via Viva Learning to those who want to consume the learning. So it's important to think about those who produce learning, how is that flow going, as well as then add it as a learning source. Then it's available in the learning catalog, which then brings it available to the user in Teams. Did that make any sense? Thumbs up if it did. Yeah, so it's important when you are planning a learning journey and the ecosystem of draw up the full life cycle. Where are things produced and where should they end up and where should the flow go? It's important to have that full overview. So yeah, and here you see an example. For example, we have the Teams Hub for learning in Teams, and then we have the different kind of learning resources. We have LMS, we have maybe different kinds of learning pathways. And then we have this central, what I called it, where we had that SharePoint list with the app learning app content repository, which is it called, that list. That goes then back into Viva Learning. Yeah, oops, sorry, a bit fast. Then it goes into Viva Learning in the lens of Teams, so everyone can find it. So this same thing, just drawn up a little bit differently. So yeah. Yeah, and here we have that again. And then, yeah, so learning pathway is one template because this is basically a SharePoint online communication template. And there are also a few other templates that you can use because having a blank sheet of paper kind of doesn't make that people that creative. But if you have some templates, you can at least either look at them, add them, and then look at them and see maybe you would like to do something similar from a blank SharePoint site, or if you just want to use the template. So there are some good examples there. So how to set it up and what type of content you would like, and also the same with onboarding. And onboarding is not something that only happens when people are coming into the organization. This is how we kind of mostly think about onboarding, but it's just as much when we are having a training campaign, for example. That is also kind of onboarding. So it is, yes, you can use it for that kind of onboarding. And there are different kinds of templates, for example, research and awareness sites as well. So there's a lot of, going to SharePoint Lookbook, there are some good examples to look at there. Now, we have talked about the front where you either produce or you consume learning, but it's also equally important to think about the governance of all this content for your information and data governance for the learning material, because some is maybe relevant just now and you can toss it out after a few months, but other things are maybe learning and training related to how you, like guidelines, how you should work, and you may want to keep it for longer. So it is important to do some consideration of the duration and where should it live, and have a proper governance structure for this learning content. And some might even be records that you need to store in a special way. So it is important to draw up that how you want to govern all the content and who should have access to what. It is important. And that is the company who has to make those decisions. It is a bit cumbersome work, but yes, you have to do it. It is, same, we have to clean our house, so it's gonna be a nice place to live. So yeah. And training is not only, if I look at the computer, for example, and these days is a big shift, because traditionally it was mostly those who were working in the office. They have access to what is on the PC and the laptop if they had. Now anyone can learn wherever they want and have access to the same resources as long as you have your smartphone. So for example, if you bring in learning as part of the adaptive cards in Viva Connections, they can be in adaptive cards, like this is the training, or I can go down into the apps and icons that I find on the bottom of my phone. Then I have Viva Learning. So I go straight in there. Like I said, I'm on the bus for an hour. What can I do? All right, I open my Teams app. I click on Viva Learning. Ta-da, I see which sessions are less than an hour. I can see one of those. Easy. No matter where I am. If I'm out on the fishing boat or if I'm out building roads, it doesn't matter. I have my training. I can find resources that I need just on my phone. So think about this also in a learning context when you're setting up your learning ecosystem. And at the same time, you have Viva Learning on the left side, and you have your Viva Connections, for example. And then you can also use those adaptive cards to, for example, have information about this webinar. So they are also audience targeted, so that if there's a specific physical training, lunch and learn in Trondheim, for example, then it will be information about that in these adaptive cards. And then you see I overdue learning because there are some learning I have to do. Then I can see that I need to do them perhaps this Friday morning. I'm going for a walk and putting on my ear, right? Yeah. Oh, there's a lot I want to talk about. See, I still have time. Yeah, gamification, important. And what can we do? Sometimes gamification doesn't have to be complex. Some years back when it was the pandemic, I was part of a Facebook group for teachers, because they have many times good idea when it comes to learning. And lo and behold, there was one, and he said, or she, I don't remember exactly, but they used actually OneNote as a escape room game. And because each page in OneNote can have a code, a password. So that means that you have to solve the issue or the question before you can go to the next page. So it can be done that simple. And also you have, if you're familiar with the Champion program of Microsoft, they have a dashboard that you can use for different kinds of activities. For example, if you're running a Champion network, then they can whenever they are supporting the organization one way or the other, you can define, for example, if I'm running a webinar, I have 3 points. If I help the finance department for 3 weeks with a new audit solution, well, maybe that is 10 points. If I run a lunch and learn, that is 5 points. So these points can add up. And then, of course, if I'm a champion, I can also get a badge that show I'm a champion. And different kinds of role can have different kinds of badges, and then you can have different points of activity. So this is an easy way to showcase people are helping each other in the organization. And there are probably other ways, and maybe you have done other fun ways of running gamification for training and skilling in your organization. So be creative, right? Yeah, and then this is also another image of how Viva Learning can look like in your teams, right? So then you have a bookmarked. I have learning that has been recommended to you. If I now have added a LMS solution, which is the obligatory training, I would have another link on the top here called assigned to. That means it's coming from an LMS solution. But other than that, it is just a recommended or bookmark, or I can also create collections of training. And another thing I can do is to create learning paths, because as we saw now, the training in Viva Learning is like a shop for learning. So it's all over different kinds of learning. I can filter by interest and providers, for example. But maybe now I have an engineer coming in, or I have champions I want to train. Then I can create certain set of training that have to go to step 1 training. These are the different learning resources, and in step 2 training, then other types of learning. And these learning elements can be picked from, like in example, it says LinkedIn Learning, but it could be CloudWay Learning, it could be the LMS Learning, it could be the webinar I saw the other day, it could be a YouTube video that is outside on the YouTube. It can all be just picked into that one journey or learning path for my my colleagues. So that is a very nice way to draw up a learning path for your colleagues. But of course, to do this, you need the premium license in Viva Learning, though. That is the only thing. And then, for example, you can use, behind Teams, you have SharePoint, which is sometimes a very well hidden secret. But you can use SharePoint list or SharePoint libraries. For example, if I had run now a series of webinars, over time, there could be quite a few. So it can be hard to find which one was for what kind of topic. So what I can do is I create a document library, basically, upload the videos of the recordings of the webinars in that library. I add a column for date, so then I can see what date was this webinar, and I can create a column for topics. And so then whenever I run a new webinar, I can tag it with a topic. And this is metadata, so about these different webinars. And then I can have, for example, another column for speaker or instructor. And then I can filter. So then if somebody comes after 3 weeks, I need do you have any information about how I can work with OneNote? Then I say, okay, go and have a look at this webinar for 3 weeks ago. Good luck. Easy. So then you can redirect people to those. And also, or you can ask them to, if you add this into as a learning element into Viva Learning, they can even find it there. Right. So put it all together. So that is use the wonderful tools that we have. And then these are the, all of these, this is like the first Viva modules. So this, you see the old logos here, but you have the learning, that's a Viva Learning that you find in the lens of Teams. And those topics are also important. I can come back to that. And then connections is where you can, like I said, you use adaptive cards and you inform about courses and information and campaigns is going to happen. And then you also use Insight, Viva Insight, to see how is our working culture. Do I see any change after we run through this training, for example? Do we change the way we work together? Do we maybe work less in the afternoon? And I put more focus hour, I put learning hours into my daily work, for example. So these are things you can pick up from the insights. So we want people to feel happy and enjoyed at work, right? So this is kind of another image of the full ecosystem, and then you find the training in the lens of Teams. Oops, here we go. Went fast a bit. Here we go. So here we say, just another drawing of the same thing. I have the learning pathway resources. I put into SharePoint list. It goes via Viva Learning into Viva Teams. So yeah, and we all need to work together to make sure this is all working. And there are some important roles that we need to have in place. And what is new is perhaps the knowledge manager. So hopefully you have that, or if you don't, you should have one or several that are taking care of who owns the knowledge development in your organization. Because there are certain technical roles that you need to add, and then you have to have the functional roles and making sure and that this knowledge management is working in your organization. And then you can set up, like I said, you have the academy where you can have different kinds of training, and then you have the feature sets of training as well. So investigate that a bit, because I see we're running out of time. Here we go. This is
5 minutes left.
Yeah, that time goes fast. And I just want to point out the working out loud principle. is super important, both when it comes to training, search it up, and especially that we learn to move away from where we're working in chat and in OneDrive only, that we need to work and share knowledge in Teams channel. And also the way, like I said, what are we saying about ourselves out there? It has to be connected to a strategy, visions, and we put it into goals, which again, we use training to make sure that we are reaching those goals. Like, for example, your Viva goal makes it more concrete. So have a look at that. That is all kind of connected, because that's what we do. And now we're going to go quickly into Viva topics, because topics is amazing. It is like Wikipedia on speed plus plus. And it is also very relevant when it comes to training, because I guess a few of you have a few three-letter words in your organization that nobody understands. Maybe even after 6 months. So for example, Viva Topics is a good place to have that information, but also about your products, your services, terms and definitions in your organization. And the thing is, when you start using Microsoft Copilot, what is in Viva Topics will show up on top when you use that to search for information as well. And then you bring in learning of these terms in dialogues in Teams, for example, in a Teams channel. I'm talking about sustainability. When I write sustainability, then it will show up a link automatically, which then my colleagues can go in and say, okay, what are we saying about sustainability or inclusion or whatever we are talking about? So then they can go in and find more information, both for those who are newly employees and for those who are working there for a long time. So it is very powerful tool, but of course it doesn't do the job by itself. You have to have roles who managing it. So go have a look at topics. It's super interesting. And for me, coming from the SharePoint world, I loved it. So yeah, culture of inclusion, use Viva Connections. Go quickly in there, and then you have the new thing coming called Skills in Viva. So it is kind of LinkedIn being merged into Viva. As you saw in the beginning, so I can show you my interest field in my Viva learning image there. But now you can also add skills combining with that. So that is super interesting coming into, it's all kind of coming together, right? And then I found this post the other day on LinkedIn, and I like this quote from Satya Nadella in his Heat Refresh book. Did you read that book? I would really recommend that. It's super good. But he wrote that adaptive challenge require mindset shift from being know-it-alls to learn-it-alls, right? So we will not stop learning, any of us. Yeah. What is important when it comes to also training, I always come back to what I call the hierarchy matrix, because you need to define who has the ownership and responsibility in your organization. If I'm now, for example, implementing Copilot, who is responsible for training that? Who is responsible for making sure that our organization is ready? One thing is technical, but also maturity-wise and digital competency-wise. How can we make sure we are ready? How can I make sure all my colleagues know how to handle content, where to share what, and all of that? So somebody has to have that responsibility, and it's not like one role. It is the whole organization, but they are responsible for different things. So my recommendation is to look at information government, who is responsible for training and creating training when it comes to that, and the digital toolbox, and when it comes to digital competency. That is important. So if you want help for that, just let me know. I have an Excel sheet for that. So actually, so, and then champions, no matter what you do, you need your champions. Then you succeed in training and you succeed in skilling. So you get this letter, and learning never stop and skilling never stop. And that's why we do what we do. We love, because we are eager of learning, and there's so much exciting things to learn in this world. And there's a lot. So of course we need to focus on what we need to learn first and make a strategy and make a plan for that. So I hope you got some good ideas during this session, and that you learned something new. This is me, and I'm part of all of these communities, so you can find me in either. And please rate my session, and There's some more activities going on in this wonderful day of Teams Nation today. So I'm excited to learn from the others. So I love learning, and I wish you all the best of luck.